Let's Take This Outside with Marianne Iveson, the podcast where she speaks to athletes, outdoor professionals, and scientists about why they connect with nature.
My guest today is Bernadette McDonald, an award-winning author, speaker, and one of the world's leading voices of mountain culture. She's written 13 books and has received some of the highest honors in mountain literature, including the Boardman Tasker Prize, the Banff Mountain Book Festival Grand Prize, and the Alberta Order of Excellence. Bernadette was a founding vice president of mountain culture at the Banff Centre and spent 2 decades directing the Banff Mountain Festivals. We're talking about her lifelong connection to the mountains, the stories that inspire her, and what mountain culture really means. Please welcome Bernadette McDonald. Bernadette, thank you so much for joining me on Let's Take This Outside. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely.
I've had so many guests from the Banff area, Canmore, the Canadian Rockies, and pretty much all of them were excited for me to talk to you because you are an absolute, I don't know if you know this, but you're an absolute legend in the Banff mountain scene. So,
no, I'm actually not aware of that. So, hey, thank you for telling me. I'll tell my husband I'm off.
Maybe I can get you like a sign or something. Like, did you know I'm a legend? Like, it's so funny, Bernadette, because you grew up in the prairies, right?
I did.
I want to know a little bit more about like kind of when you grew up in the prairies and your attraction to nature. And do you remember that first time you saw the mountains and kind of like what sparked in you?
Well, I remember it very clearly, actually. And I was not attracted to nature as a child. I was a nerd and I practiced piano all the time. So that was my world. No, our family did a little Christmas holiday trip to British Columbia. So we drove out in our 1949 Oldsmobile, and we stopped in Banff for the night. And it was one of those beautiful nights. It was snowing. It was cold, but not like the prairies. There was no wind. And my dad and I went for a walk. My mom stayed back in the motel with my 2 younger brothers. But anyway, Dad and I went for a walk. And, I looked around. You could still see kind of the shapes of the mountains through the snowfall. And I don't know, it just seemed like this is a beautiful landscape. I feel comfortable here. It's cozy, it's different than being out on the prairies. There's definition to the valleys. And I thought this is where I want to live. I don't know how and when that'll ever happen. But so I was 11.
I was going to say, how old were you at this point? 11. And you knew from the time you were 11 that you wanted to live in the Rockies, really?
I knew that I wanted to live in the mountains. Yeah, I didn't know enough about the mountains to understand that there were different ranges. I just knew like this was a place that really resonated for me as an 11-year-old.
Do you remember, was there any kind of, like, did you kind of tuck it away or did you kind of immerse yourself in learning more about mountains from that point forward? Because you said you were a bit of a nerd, so.
Yeah, I don't actually think I did much research at that point. I was so focused on my kind of music training that I would say I must have tucked it away. But it definitely didn't go away because when I went to university, it was in a mountainous area. So no, I think I just kind of started working on it.
What initially drew you to kind of explore and celebrate mountain culture, and how do you define that today?
Well, as I mentioned, sort of my background was a cultural background, I suppose. I was committed to music training, and so I was aware of a life of culture. And when I first started getting involved in the mountains and doing sort of adventures in the mountains with my husband, which was very nice of him to cart me along because I was an absolute newbie. Anyway, it occurred to me that there were, some crossovers. And when I first started volunteering with the film festival, 1986, I think it was, I was mostly just exposed to film. And so, that was wonderful. Great mountain films. So there's, it was mostly about adventure back then, but not completely. But I soon became aware of the fact that there were all kinds of ways of representing the mountains, the adventures, the feelings, the emotions that people have when they're doing things in the mountains. And so that, carried over into literature and, photography, art, music, all of those things. So I think it fairly quickly, it became obvious to me that this was a much larger catchment basin than just films. I guess it was just sort of a marriage between a life of sort of pursuing a cultural practice, which was music, and carrying that over into all kinds of different ways of expressing yourself, but in a way inspired by the mountain landscape.
So you would say that your artistic cultural background really kind of plays into how it shaped for you to today, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it does carry over in all kinds of ways. But one of the sort of the least romantic ways is that the cultural background that I had is based a lot on work. To be a musician, basically what you must do is practice a lot, hours and hours a day. And I think that particular tradition carried over well into the work that was required to run the festival, to start the Center for Mountain Culture, and ultimately to write books about mountaineering. It's there's inspiration. There are all kinds of things that play into that work, but one of the most important things is just kind of a work mentality, which is put the hours in and stuff will happen.
So as you're progressing into, work like, because you volunteered first and then you ended up working for the Banff Mountain Festivals. So were you a full-time musician and then you were volunteering? Or were you also like playing outside and learning to like ski and climb and do all these things? Like kind of what did your life look like as you were kind of transitioning into this?
It was definitely transitioning. I wouldn't say I was a full-time musician anymore because, again, with my husband, we were living part of the time in Jasper, and I was back in Banff working part of the time. And when we were in Jasper, we were mostly in the backcountry. His job took him into the backcountry where we were living in cabins and traveling around the backcountry of Jasper with horses. So we had 4 horses, 2 saddle horses and 2 pack horses. And it was kind of like living in a different almost century, really. Really, there was no phones, no electricity, no running water, any of that stuff, but just, patrolling the backcountry with these horses. And that we would do that for 2 to 3 weeks at a time and then come out and then frantically, try and catch up on what had happened with our mail, our bills, our phone calls, all other stuff.
Yeah.
And
life, yeah.
And during that time, the Banff Centre started this music program, full-time music program. So I was able to apply for that. And so it was a transition time, really. It was a transition time from being a full-time musician to being kind of this backcountry person, trying to figure out, how to live in the backcountry safely. And then the film festival was just it seemed like a natural progression at the time. But when you look back on it, or when I look back on it, there were, a number of fairly sharp curves on that road. And yeah, I'm kind of glad I was able to take them.
Can I ask maybe what sharp curves are you speaking of?
Well, the sharp curve of going from, being a musician where you're never far away from your instrument because you can't be, you have to practice, to going into the backcountry where, I could see my hands changing, because you're dealing with heavy stuff and ropes and all this kind of stuff. It sounds ridiculous, but your body changes depending on what you're doing with it. And so that was a transition, going from, being that person who sits at the piano all the time to that person who sat on a saddle for hours every day. And then back to the Banff Centre, where it was, again, this hotbed of culture and creativity. And it was just that, it seemed like a really sharp curve.
So you spent 20 years directing the Banff Mountain Festival. So it's not, I think a lot of people know about the film festival, I think is probably the most common one in knowledge in the outdoors. But what are the other festivals that they have? I know you mentioned a couple of them. And what did that career kind of look like for you? Because that must have been very busy and something that you probably took a lot of ownership of, because it's such a cool experience for mountain lovers to go to.
Yeah, I think it really was just a kind of a realization that as wonderful as the film festival was, obviously focusing on film, there was just so much more that we could do to celebrate the various other aspects of mountain culture. So I mean, the first thing was the book festival. I was an avid reader. A lot of people who are part of the mountain community are avid readers, and there was just so much rich material to delve into and to celebrate. And so that was the first obvious thing to do, is to start a book festival. And then it seemed like another obvious step was to start, educational programs. So like the mountain writing program and the filmmakers program and the summer mountain photography program. I mean, the Banff Centre is a learning institution, so we were so incredibly lucky to be, situated there. You could have a festival. There are all kinds of theaters and public spaces that you can use, but there are also all these intimate spaces that we had access to for training purposes. So, yeah, I mean, at the time, everything seemed very new and like, oh, I wonder if we could do that. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing? Looking back, it seems like it was kind of a logical progression, at least from my perspective. It seems like it was a logical progression.
How did that transition feel, moving from the festival to writing? And at what point were you like, I really just, I love books. I really want to share stories myself through my own writing.
There was an overlap. I was involved with several book projects while I was still, working at the Banff Centre. And in part it was an overlap because the books, one of the things that we started doing were these summits. We didn't do them every year because they were an enormous amount of work. But the first one was at the 25th anniversary of the film festival. We had the Banff Mountain Summit. And so we invited, I think it was 32 of the guests that we had in the past. So to come back to the festival, and we had this massive gathering of mountaineers. I mean, everybody was there. Hillary was there, Messner, Ricardo.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Ricardo Cassine,
Wow.
Catherine Destabille. It was a wild gathering. And they all, gave lectures. And one of the things that we wanted to do was have some kind of a lasting product from that event. And so a local friend who was a photographer, we did a book, and each of the guests wrote an essay, and he did a beautiful portrait. And the person who had to pull this book together, of course, you're looking at her. So this was my first, this was my first foray into actually a book project. Yeah. And part of the book was also writing the history of the festival up to that point. And then we had 2 more of these summits over the next few years, each of which also produced a book. And so I was starting to get into, this habit of book production and also writing and editing. And so the transition, it was an overlap. But when it occurred to me that there wasn't quite enough time anymore in the day to do both, it was when I had two book contracts on the go at the same time. And yeah, I know you can see where this is going. And also it had been 20 years, I've been there for 20 years, and it seemed like a good time to open up the festival and the center to new energy and new ideas. And yeah, it's 20 years. It's a good run.
But you still are you must be volunteering still.
No, not really. I mean, I'm still there. No, I'm still involved in other ways. Quite often, not every year, but quite often I'm doing, moderating a panel or interviewing somebody on the stage, or doing a lecture from one of my books. Luckily.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Yes, you can turn it around. And now you're the person being like, hey, I have a book. I'd like to promote it, please.
Exactly,
yes.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
No, it's great, actually. It's great.
You have written extensively about climbers, explorers, the spirit of adventure. What compels you to tell their stories? And what are some of your favorite stories?
At a much lower level of performance, I do a lot of the things that they do. And so I empathize with them. I I understand their motivation. I understand their excitement. I feel like I'm part of that community. And so I am compelled to tell their stories because I think they're really interesting. It's always about the people. I mean, these are mountain people, but there would be equally compelling stories if you were part of, I think, of a sailing community or some other kind of community. This is the community that I know and feel familiar with, but I'm very motivated to tell their stories because I think they're interesting. I think they're in some cases quite inspiring, and yeah, I empathize with them.
I know there's lots of them, but what are some of your favorite stories? Who are some of the coolest people that you've had the honor of sharing their story?
You mentioned that earlier, and I went through all of the books that I've written.
Yeah.
And I think actually my favorite story, maybe my favorite experience was the book called Freedom Climbers. It's about the Polish climbing community. And it was the first experience where I went into another culture and attempted to tell their story. And so it was I was quite nervous about it. I was actually petrified because, how are they going to react to this? Were they going to basically say, who do you think you are? These are our stories. We'll tell them ourselves. Thank you very much. But that's not what happened. As I sort of made my tentative entrance into the Polish climbing community, I was met with warmth, encouragement, just amazing cooperation. It was such a great experience to get to know these people, to get to know their families, to spend time around their kitchen tables, talking, looking at images, laughing with them, crying with them, going into the mountains with them, and experiencing after the book was written just their gratitude. They were just so gracious about it all, and I learned so much about a community that had a much harsher environment than what we have in the West, and yet how they sort of rose above all that and became these amazing high altitude climbers. I think that was my favorite project.
Let's Take This Outside with Marianne Iveson. Let's Take This Outside now has a newsletter. Keep up to date with outdoor news, events, and great discount codes and deals from our partners. Sign up today at letstakethisoutside.ca.
Your latest project, Alpine Rising, is about Sherpa and the Nepalese people, correct? Or is it just in general about people who help climbers reach the top of mountains in different cultures?
Yeah, it's a little more general than that because it's about the Nepalese climbers, but also the Pakistani climbers who make it possible for a lot of Western climbers to achieve their goals in the high mountains of Asia. And it's in a way it's a similar motivation as my Freedom Climbers book. I wanted to tell the stories of people who I admired, but who I felt their stories weren't as well known as they should be. In fact, not known at all. Many of the Pakistani climbers who I profiled in Alpine Rising are completely unknown outside of the villages where they live. They're not even well known in Pakistan. So yeah, that was my motivation, and in both cases, just wanted to give them a voice.
And what is their voice saying? Because there's a bit of I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a bit of a roar right now about Everest specifically. And because there's a lot of things coming to light about the dead bodies and the junk that's left up there. And I was lucky enough to go to Everest Base Camp about 8 years ago. So I've been lucky enough to hang out with the Sherpa and the Nepalese people and see how amazing they are. But do you have any thoughts on the conquering of, I'm putting in air quotes, the conquering of mountains, and maybe how the Nepalese people are treated, or the Sherpa? Yeah, there's a bit of a bigger question there, but I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on what that kind of looks like today, because I feel like social media is making these things worse.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of the instant gratification of posting all the time is making it different for sure. And the situation in Nepal and in Pakistan is radically different. The Nepalese climbers have been at this for a very long time, and they have realized the potential, the financial, the business potential of doing this for Western climbers, and so has the Nepalese government. So the way it's evolving in Nepal is quite different than the way it's evolving in Pakistan, because in Pakistan everything is still very much controlled by the military. So the two situations are quite different. As far as what you mentioned, the bodies and uh, the garbage, so on. Yeah, the it's I think there are some real similarities. And yeah, I don't know. There are, of course, there are expeditions that are organized specifically to bring garbage down, and I mean that to some extent is working quite well. As far as the accidents on the mountain where people are left, that's a horrible topic, and it's very controversial. But at the same time, if you look at the practicalities, it's also a very dangerous operation to send people up in order to bring a body down. It's I mean, we could actually talk about all of this for hours, because I mean, it's unbelievably complicated, and there's lots of discussion now and criticism, for example, of the Nepalese climbers, particularly the Sherpas, who have turned this into a super lucrative business. On the other hand, they they didn't just create this system; they learned it from us. I mean, the money that was being made in the high mountains was almost 100% in the past being made by Western expedition leaders, and now it's not. Now it's being made by mostly Sherpas. So we can tusk and say, oh my goodness, it's so commercial. Yeah, that's right. Actually, it has been for a really long time. It's just that somebody else is making the money now. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's
It's a bigger conversation than you and I in, 45
yeah,
minutes.
it really
So,
is. It really is. It's so
yeah, yeah.
complicated.
Banff specifically, or, the Canadian Rockies, how do you think the conversation around mountains and adventure has evolved since your early days at Banff? And maybe we kind of just touched on it too, like the conquering and like getting that serotonin hit from posting and social media. But I would love your thoughts.
Oh yeah, it has changed radically. I mean, the stories that are being told now, whether it's in a film or a book or even in a photo essay, the stories now are much more complex. They're more three-dimensional. I think p- uh, storytellers are look they're looking they're a lot more self-reflective. There are lots of things that people are grappling with. Obviously, the environment. I mean, the mountain landscape is changing dramatically, but also, just if you read a mountaineering book that was published in 2025 and compare to something that was published in 1951, conquering rarely shows up now in the narrative. I mean, if it does, it just shouldn't be there. The whole sort of conquering mentality, I think, has shifted pretty radically. Yeah, I think the storytelling is more complex, more introspective, more interesting.
I think there's also a conversation, especially since I would say COVID, about the benefits of the outdoors and your mental health, right?
It's interesting. When one point we were talking about how important the mountain landscape is, just for the creative process, and I can't believe how important it is just to get outside and move. It's good for your health. It's good for all kinds of things, but it's also good for your head, because you just it clears things up. It gives you some well, energy and some fresh air and space to think about the creative process. Yeah, I think there's a lot more knowledge about that now.
You seem quite humble, but you've been recognized with some of the highest honors in mountain literature. What do those awards mean to you? And kind of how do you stay motivated to keep writing?
Well, the awards are, I mean, obviously they're gratifying, right? I mean, it's nice to be, recognized. Absolutely. It's really nice. But you cannot you cannot write or make films or do anything with that as your main motivation, because that's very destructive. Because obviously, for every award that you get, there are 10 that you don't. So it's not a good
or more.
Yeah, that's right. So it's not a good idea to focus too much on that. But I mean, from a practical perspective, it's really good because they make it easier for you to launch the next project, right? If a publisher looks at that, at a track record, they'll be more inclined to say, "Oh, yeah, that's good. You go ahead and do that next project." So practically, it's really good. But no, the motivation is to for a new project. It's honestly, it's always about the people. One of the more recent projects that I did was about a young Polish climber, Kasper Tekeli. I wrote just a magazine piece for Summit magazine, and everybody said to me, "So, who is he, and why? Why should we publish a piece on him?" And it goes back to his character, his personality. Obviously he was a climber, he was this and all of that, but mostly he was just a wonderful human being, generous, kind, welcoming, all of those curious, all of those things that make for a compelling character. And I know for sure that that's what motivates me to write.
When you're not writing, you're often like climbing and hiking, skiing. I'm assuming those outdoor experiences kind of feed into your creative process, like they kind of need each other, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting. I just probably take it for granted for most of the time that, oh yeah, that's just kind of what I do. That's my life. But in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been struggling with some injuries, and it has very quickly become apparent just how important those activities are, because when they're not there, it's really tough. It's really frustrating.
Bernadette, it's so funny. I'm not joking when I say maybe once a podcast it comes up that people don't necessarily notice like how they feel when they are working out regularly, especially like these extreme athletes I'm talking to. It's more, or just normal people who like to play outside. It's more when the absence of it, right? Whether it's like maybe a streak of bad weather, or it's, a bad like mental health space, or taking care of family, or whatever that may be, right? Sometimes you don't realize, like for me, it comes up as anxiety. And like, why am I feeling so tired? Why am I feeling so anxious? Why do I it's because I haven't spent real time in nature in a few days or a week or whatever that may be.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you 100%. Yeah. I just take it for granted. Of course, that's what I do. And then, I can't do that right now. And, I have to do physio over and over. Over. I'm so sick of physio.
Yeah. But you have to, Bernadette. I'm gonna nag you. I'm gonna email you once a week and be like, "Are you doing doing your physio?"
Oh my gosh, another nagger.
Actually, my dad had surgery last week. He just had he had cataract surgery, and I made sure to put in his phone timers every multiple times a day before I left. I was like, "You have to take your drops." So maybe
that's really important,
right? You have to remind yourself. What have mountains taught you personally about creativity, solitude, resilience? What have they taught you?
I think they've just taught me that it's when you find your place, when you find your the space on this planet that feels good to you, just kind of go for it. Take full advantage of what they have to offer. Be inspired, get out in them, and just be grateful that you can. I mean, I really am grateful that I can live in a landscape that it feels good to me. It's not absolutely necessary. I know that it's possible to live a full and creative and all kinds of great things kind of life in other settings. But if you find a landscape that works for you, I would say embrace it and do everything you can to be there, to live there.
Your latest book, Alpine Rising, is out now. Where can people find that? Your other books? Where can people buy those, download those?
Yeah, I mean, the local bookstores, I obviously always recommend local bookstores first. But if especially with the older titles, they don't always have them except for our local bookstores. Thank you very much, local bookstores. But no, I mean, Amazon.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
Is there anything you're working on right now that you can share with us that might be coming out soon, or?
No, well, what I'm working on right now is actually working on a film script. So no, I can't.
Oh, jeez.
Yes. Just advising, just helping out.
That's what happened with books, though. You said you were just advising with books, and now you're like a full-time writer. So I don't believe you anymore.
Yeah, well, I don't know. This is a new, very scary adventure, but I can't really talk about it specifically. But there you go.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure it'll probably blow our minds. Bernadette, thank you so much for taking time in your very busy schedule to chat about mountains with me. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. For more Let's Take This Outside, go to letstakethisoutside.ca.
A production of the Sound Off Media Company.